This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hey everybody, Tim the Nerd here, and sitting next to me we have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey.
Hello.
Before we started today's episode, we wanted to give you some amazing news that I think is going to be very good for the health of Friends Talking Nerdy.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yes, Friends Talking Nerdy has officially joined the Deluxe Edition Network.
Also known as Den.
Den, yeah. And, you know, as you're listening to this right now, we will have, I promise you, we'll have more updates and a more detailed conversation about the move to this place in episode 330 from the looks of it here. So, you know, next week, folks, when you're hearing this. But we just wanted to let you know that there will be some minor cosmetic changes here in terms of how we produce the show. But at the end of the day, being able to join a much bigger organization like this, and it's a volunteer thing. It's not like we're getting paid or anything like that. But, you know, one thing I like about the indie podcast community is how open they seem to be in terms of being able to help each other out too, so everybody gets better. You know, like indie podcasts are, you're fighting upstream to get noticed, because even in Portland, Oregon, you know, here, there, think of how many independent podcasts are being created in Portland, Oregon right now.
So many.
And being able to get the attention of somebody in the whole, you know, social media realm, or for instance, or whatever, is really hard to do. And honestly, the only way you can really succeed in terms of just growing, and, you know, and as we've stated many times before, success is not based on money. It's based on, you know, just the love of what we do and, you know, the growth of it.
Absolutely. It's been a wonderful experience doing the podcast and seeing it like just get better and better and better.
Indeed, folks, one for the drinking game. So we don't want to keep this going for too long here, because like we said, we'll have some more information on our next episode, episode 330, 330 freaking episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy.
Wow. We're
And
really
so-
excited to be in Den and join all the great podcasts that are on there, and we hope that it helps you enjoy our podcast more.
Yes, folks, that much I agree upon. So going forward, you're going to hear the Den, welcome to the Den Network promo at the start of our show, instead of, you know, you're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network. And at the middle of our show now, we're actually going to have commercials from the other podcast in the Den Network.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So you'll be able to kind of get a sample of the groups that, you know, are, you know, helping uplift us while we help uplift them the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you all very much for being here for this very brief interruption to your show experience. Now, Christopher Lazarick, take it away.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
This is the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, Tim the Nerd. I did it, folks. Welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. We thank you for starting your week off with us. Sitting next to me, we have future Jeopardy champion, the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I'm doing really good, Tim. How are you doing?
Doing good. Now, that is not just some standard stuff that I just spew out of my mouth, verbal effluvia, if you will. Tell the folks about how you have been personally selected to audition for Jeopardy.
Yeah, I received an email to myself that said, "Dear Aubrey, did you know that educators do well on Jeopardy? we'd love it if you and your colleagues would try out for Jeopardy. Please let everybody at PCC know you ought to try out for Jeopardy.
And you did.
So the first step is you go on their website, you register, and then you can take the test. And then if your test results are good enough, you get talked to by someone. And it's
Yeah.
like a special test for everyone who got an email. Because you choose, did you get an email? Are you in Mensa? All the different ways in which you would get invited.
I'm definitely excited for you to potentially have a chance on Jeopardy. Now, obviously, you just took the test. This is step one of the process, of a many-stepped process. You have not heard back from anybody as of yet, but you've also been studying up on the game.
Well, I'll tell you, I did not do well on the test. There was both a intellectual and a technological / quickness of hand issue going on.
Mm-hmm.
So at first, on the first few questions, I didn't understand what I was supposed to do. Like, I didn't understand where the submit button was.
But you can take the test more than once, right?
No,
Oh, one time only.
no. You can take it again, but it's like you have to only take it every 3 months or something. They think
Okay.
you're going to get, that much smarter in the time, I guess. But so the problem I had was with the whole first half of the test, I didn't know how to submit the answers.
And so time kept running out.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that's not a bad sign, and if we don't hear anything 3 months from now, well, you'll try again. I know you love Jeopardy.
I do. So yeah, you said I was doing my homework, and so that just means I've been watching a lot of Jeopardy.
Yeah, we've talked about Pluto TV many times over the years on Friends Talking Nerdy here, and we're not, they're not advertising with us, but I got to say, for what Pluto TV has to offer, I really appreciate it. Because, like, Jeopardy, would I, like, buy a box set of Jeopardy episodes? No. But is it great to just have an app that plays it 24/7 on its own Jeopardy channel? Damn right. Because sometimes when you have a certain TV shows, they're there more just for the noise and the comfort level, because obviously with a show like Jeopardy, I mean, like, we were both kids when that show was first entering its golden age in the 80s, and so we've grown up with it.
Yeah.
And it is, and watching like the old episodes of The Price is Right with Bob Barker brings me back to all the times that I convinced my mother I was sick so I could watch The Price is Right at home.
Wow. And yet you ended up with such a good education.
Me fail English? That's impossible. Simpsons reference for you folks. Check out Pluto TV. Again, they have the Jeopardy app there, the Jeopardy channel there.
And it seems like they have sort of just iconic show channels.
Not just Jeopardy. They have Wheel of Fortune, classic Family Feud with both Richard Dawson and Ray Combs. Wheel of Fortune, like I mentioned, they also have some newer game shows too, like a Deal or No Deal channel. My kids used to love that game.
Really?
Yeah, I used to. In fact, we made up like a home version of the game, like with like just like slips of paper and like and just had them all choose. I wouldn't want my kids to become gamblers because they would be bad.
Yeah, couldn't quite get it.
They would, just keep on going and keep on going. Now, obviously, there was no real money behind what I was offering them anyway, so it's a lot easier to keep on making that decision compared to people that are actually in the hot seat on the television show making that choice. But they just kept on going, and like a lot of times they'd end up with like a penny, just because they just had to keep on going to the last case.
What were you betting?
Well, we just played Deal or No Deal.
Right, but what was symbolic of?
Because in that game, you are opening up cases, hoping that the final one that you open up has $1 million in it.
Right.
And what you're essentially gambling is every round you pick like 5 suitcases, and then, those get eliminated, and you keep on going until, there's one left. Or the banker guy gives you an offer money-wise that you can't refuse. Basically, they'll say, I'll give you $70,000 to call it a day and end your turn.
Huh.
And yeah, the kids never chose the banker. They're like, fuck it, we're going all the way to the end.
And you were the banker.
Yeah.
So you would give them good, what you thought they should take as good deals.
Well, I tried to keep it similar to the game. Yeah. I mean, they weren't playing for real money. Let's put it that way. Again, folks, it was just, something we did to entertain ourselves, because, again, 47-year-old men can sit in front of the TV all day. Kids can't.
No.
And 47-year-old men probably shouldn't be in front of the TV all day, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will definitely keep you folks at home updated if we hear any further news about the professor potentially heading to Hollywood and meeting either Blossom or the Mormon Ken Jennings. You were totally shocked and appalled and disgusted that he's a Mormon. The guy who is one of the current hosts of Jeopardy and holds the record for the largest amount of money won on the game. You were like, a fucking Mormon? Ew!
The Mormons, I feel like, are one of the last populations that it feels okay to do that about.
Make fun of?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times, like that South Park episode where they talked about the beginning of the Mormon church, dum 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 dum, that episode.
Mm-hmm.
They also had an actual Mormon character that was trying to befriend Stan, and a lot of Mormon kids are taught to be like that kid in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone super friendly, but also, being a little self-deprecating when it comes to the religion. Oh, I get it. That's funny type of deal, instead of doing what like in a Southern Baptist would do.
Right.
I'm going to sue. It's not in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Or like freak out and shoot each other and
wacky stuff. But yeah, you were totally disgusted by Ken Jennings being a Mormon.
Well, I kind of had this Mormon feeling about him. Like, I feel like I have Mormon radar that I can tell when people are Mormon. I just get this like funny sense. It's like a little tickle. And I'm like, that's a Mormon.
My Mormon sense is activated. The Mormon signal's in the air. Professor Aubrey, we need you. We just lost our Utah audience. But yes, like I said, we will keep you up to date. But I've had an interesting week here myself. What I've been trying to do is kind of breaking some old habits. One of them, and I know I've spoken about this before on the show too, but one of them is when I do get into emotional slumps, my activity as a writer goes down tremendously, and a lot of times just ends up stopping, which is not good, because writing is very much a craft like playing the guitar, any other art piece. The more you do consistently on a regular basis, the better you're going to get. And a lot of times with writing, I think writers, and I've suffered from this, and I know other artists have suffered from the similar thing too, of like imposter syndrome, like, why would anybody want to read my stuff? Blah, 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 that type of deal. But I'm trying to fight through that. And what I've done, and like I mentioned, I kind of dusted off our WordPress blog for the show, kind of made it more focused as a blog and not just a center page with all the show related stuff. But activated that and actually dusted off our Substack too. Like a couple years ago, I'd started a Substack and did nothing with it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but are you familiar with Substack at all?
No, I wasn't. And then I said, what is Substack? And you told me a little bit about it.
Yeah, the Cribs Notes version, it's kind of like the end.
Cribs Notes.
Cliff Notes, Crib Note, whatever.
Cribs Notes.
Yo, street smarts.
Okay, sorry.
Professor Snoop Dogg, anyway. Make me forget what I was saying. Substack, think of it as like the end result of a blog and a social media company having a baby.
Gotcha.
It kind of incorporates both.
Sounds a little bit like LiveJournal.
I'm familiar with the name LiveJournal, but this, from what I'm seeing with Substack, a lot more, like freelance writers or professional writers are actually posting work on there and are actually making some decent money because if you get a big enough audience, they will share the money with you. And they have been kind of enticing some like writers. You get some comic book writers too that create stuff just for Substack. My goal here is to create something every day. So basically, it's just like what you do with your guitar playing.
Yeah.
You have in the past played some songs from the medley from Abbey Road, and then for a while didn't play them. And recently you've picked those songs back up as well. And, like a writer that hasn't been writing for months at a time, you would say yourself the first few times you tried it, just a little rough. But the more you went back at it, the more it was like riding a bike.
Yeah, it is really surprising because when I did first try, I thought I'll never be able to play that stuff again, and I'll never be patient enough to relearn it, having learned it once. Yeah, I just kept at it, and by the fourth or fifth time I played it, it was sounding better, and then it was just like it came back like muscle memory.
And that's my goal here with my writing. Like the big change I want to try and do is just create more healthy habits because like financially I'm what you call ruined, folks. And my writing, my podcast, my creative endeavors can be a way potentially out of that. Am I banking everything on it? No, that would not be smart to do because becoming famous for a podcast or famous for your writing is like winning the lottery. I mean, you put a lot of hard work into it to get there, but it's really luck. It's just happening to meet the right person at the right time to help get you a bigger audience. So in the meantime, like, I guess, if you want to compare my creative endeavors to a person like in a band or something like that, and I've made this analogy before, like I'm at the point to where like I'm in a band that plays at a bar every Saturday in their local neighborhood, and they got a few people showing up that are enjoying the hell out of it. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, that's still going to be one hell of an achievement. Do I want more? Damn right I do. And changes like this I think will go a long way towards hopefully being, I guess, a little more productive with my time than I have been. Like one thing I did do was delete the mobile games off my iPad because I found, most of the time throughout the day when I did have free time, I'm playing those games instead of like reading, because if you're a writer, you have to be a reader as well. And reading is not a chore if you get the right book, of course. And I had not been doing enough of that, whether it be the comic book or prose variety. And that doesn't mean I'm going to stop gaming altogether. I got Civilization on my computer I can play. I got my PlayStation 4 and all that. So there are plenty of ways to still, satisfy my gaming itch because I'm not a big gamer, but I am a gamer after all. But by making it to where I have to make a concerted effort to, turn the PlayStation on, get the right game going, and doing that compared to just tapping one button on my iPad and up it goes.
Right.
It's all about
Sometimes some things can be too easy.
So if you haven't done so already and you are listening to this, feel free to head to our show description, tap on the Linktree link, and it will bring you to either one of our either one of those pages that I talked about, the Substack or the WordPress page, and just join the journey. Like what I've done on Substack as well is written a couple of articles based on stuff we've done on the show. Like one article was talking about last week's episode.
Yeah.
Give it a read. Tell me what you think. Let's start the conversation going, from there. Now, one people we won't be having conversations with are the folks at Acast.
Yeah, they turned out to be a-holes.
Yeah. Behind the curtain here, folks, like we talked about briefly last week, to be able to have a podcast, you have to have a podcast host. Some of those hosts cost money. Some of them are free. We've primarily, for those long majority of the show, have used Spotify for podcasters, which used to be Anchor, which is a free option. For the audience that we have, it's perfect. It's still free, and do have some, some little quibbles with that service, but nothing too major. But like I mentioned last week, I decided to make a transition to another free service, to Acast, that for their free service did have better like statistics you could look at. And ended up switching everything over, got the RSS feeds directing everything like it should, and then I uploaded the latest episode and waited for it to drop at midnight. Waited till 1 a.m., waited till 2 a.m., went to bed, woke up at 10 a.m., and it still wasn't there. Went all the way till noon and tried to get in contact with somebody in support at Acast. Now, mind you, when I was switching over, redirecting the show feed from Spotify to Acast, I had to speak to Spotify for Podcasters customer service. In the live chat. They were on in less than 30 seconds. Acast, it took them quite a few hours. And like by the time they got back to me, I'd already switched everything back to Spotify for podcasters. Like it possibly may have been a different experience if we had started the show fresh there. But switching everything over, like I don't know specifically what happened, because I've done the switching before. Spotify is the third host that we've had on the show,
Right.
so I know what I'm doing in that point. And also too, like when you schedule a podcast to be released, I generally choose now Mondays at midnight, but usually what will happen is that you do have to give an additional about 9 or 10 minutes for it to appear on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever. But again, in this particular case, it just wasn't showing up at all.
Right.
And
Hours and hours.
yeah. And again, not that we have a big audience at all, but if you want to be successful as a podcaster, consistency is key. And part of that consistency is making sure that if people expect you at a certain time, you are there at that time. And so, I went back to Spotify for podcasters, and the whole process took like less than 5 minutes to switch everything back, get the episode uploaded with Spotify, and it was a dream. And again, do I still have some minor quibbles about the Spotify service? I do. And if we get big enough to the point to where we can, invest in another service that has better statistics, if we get a big enough audience, that is definitely going to be the plan. But much better than Acast.
Yeah.
Much better. So, behind the curtains stuff here, folks.
I'm so glad that the podcast has you to take care of all of those things.
I mean, that's just what the role that I bring here. I mean, you bring yourself and various other things to the show here as well. So anybody that's been, like, this has always been a group experience.
Yeah.
I can't bring everything to the table. You can't bring everything to the table. And, I certainly love being able to, record and do the whole behind the scenes stuff. Like, started trimming the episodes again.
Oh, right.
Yes. What do I mean by trimming? Basically editing. For the longest time, I was using a PC, Odyssey or Audacity or whatever they call it.
Audacity.
Yeah. That program was fine for what it was, but the whole going through the entire episode again to cut the unneeded spots was a lot more of a hassle than it was with GarageBand. And recently we started recording primarily just on my MacBook Air here, which GarageBand is free on, by the way. And I didn't immediately start doing the trimming again, but I realized, why am I not doing that? You know, and it's fun being able to go through and notice like little vocal quirks. You know, like me, saying indeed a lot, you know, and whatnot, a lot, things like that. And, you know, you
I
have,
just like I giggle a lot, and then I just lose my train of thought. So then there's lots of pauses.
it's like William Shatner. Yeah, like, you know how William Shatner is, you know, the Klingons are coming for this ship. You know? So it's fun listening back to it and kind of shaping it. Like, you know, like the what we are making right now is, you know, recording is the rough audio, being able to go through that rough audio and cut some extra spaces out. Like the past couple episodes, I've been able to save about 4 or 5 minutes worth of space, just removing the extra dead spaces that we can. So changes are always coming on Friends Talking Nerdy or anything that, you know, creative that I'm involved with, because staying stagnant, you know, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results is not a good idea.
Yeah, no, that's the definition of insanity, in fact.
Yeah, I cribbed it. I didn't try to proclaim it was real, but anyway. But that's kind of behind the scenes fun here at the podcast.
Hi, I'm Don Brody, a comedian with a history degree and the host of the podcast HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck. Each episode, I am joined by a new guest who has brought me a subject from history that they want to know more about. Then I hit the books, I dig deep in the annals, and stimulate. We've covered Frankenstein, Houdini, Joan of Arc, Pompeii, the Salem witch trials, right? Ugh. Join us and find out for yourself that history is a party and everybody's coming.
But before we get to our main topic, the crows have been interesting.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's getting on crow season. Here we are in the middle of October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I've talked about on the show many times, you know, I am one of those city dwellers that love to leave treats on occasion for the birds of the neighborhood, primarily crows, but we do get some scrub jays that will show up and try to get some scraps.
Mm-hmm.
But it was funny today. We had one crow, and this crow is the one that I made the video of with the cats on TikTok. That I posted on TikTok. And basically what he did today was, you were in a meeting on the computer and just completely oblivious to everything. But then the crow got on the railing, but the side railing near the big window by the office, and was like looking into the house and cawing and cawing. And like I finally came and like I saw it, and the crow started cawing at me in a similar call pattern that he did on the video. So basically what he was telling me was, what? You gonna come get me? Huh? What? You're a bitch. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm gonna take these peanuts that you left out here and I'm gonna eat them and enjoy them, but fuck you.
Just needed to show you who was boss.
That's right.
And then did it, like, once it did that, it flew away?
Once he got a mouthful of peanuts, he flew away, yeah.
But he wanted you to see him take them.
Yeah, he was calling. I mean, these crows, will have certain calls. You know, just they know that if they hang out on the wires outside the house, and just like call like 3 times, they're usually trying to call for me or the neighbor to leave something out.
Uh-huh.
You know, and you know, I like I mentioned too, I've kind of getting to know which ones are coming, because I mean they're crows, they're all black, so you know the only thing you can really differentiate is like their behavior or their voice, you know. But that was definitely fun, and the cats definitely love when the crows show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially Mimsy. Like she will be in the midst of heat. Thankfully, she's getting out of that now. But she'll be in the midst of heat. But she sees a crow. She's like, "Fuck it! I'm going to the window. Yeah."
Speaking of, the kitties have gotten some fun things.
Ah, yes. The cat necklace
Mm-hmm.
is something that Annie has fallen in love with. She didn't know what to make of it at first, but once she understood that having this thing on her neck, which she was annoyed at, would also put a little fuzzy thing with a bell right in front of her, like she will just be oblivious to everything else but that toy the entire time that she has it on. I mean, we have to close the bedroom door to make sure she doesn't get wrapped up in like light wires or anything like that. But
And doesn't get under the bed where we can't get to her to take it off of her if it's an emergency of some sort.
exactly, that's the primary thing. But like I have a little video that I posted online of her like running around in circles
Mm.
trying to capture it. But I had my sister and another complete stranger say I was mean for doing that. Now, I don't get that at all because we're not talking about a laser pointer. You know, the cat is able to actually get this thing that is on that wire.
Uh-huh.
And, there have been plenty of times where Annie has gotten it in her mouth and is carrying it to, like she did that this morning. Like she got it into her mouth and first walked to the bedroom, but saw that the bedroom door was closed. And I swear she almost like cocked her head like, okay, can't go in there. And then she turned and walked around and she had to bring it to her bag. She's a bad kitty.
She is a bag kitty. She has several bags. Her bags are where she puts her toys.
Mm-hmm.
And she puts them in there to make sure that nobody else plays with them while she's not playing with them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like let's say like a pile of clothing. I mean, why would you ever have a pile of clothing?
Yeah.
I don't know, but sometimes you have a pile of clothing and start going through to like put it in the laundry and it's full of Annie's toys. Where she's gone in and been like, oh, I'm going to put this here. And then she also loves to ride around in her bags.
Oh, yeah. Like I will take the bag while it's on the floor, open it up, and then she will just run in, her tail's up high. She will run into the bag all on all fours. And then what I do is pick up the bag and I start swinging it. And I swing it pretty hard, not like in circles or anything like that, because she would hit the ceiling. But
More like those big swings at amusement parks where it goes up high in the sky and it goes around and you spin off of it.
yeah, something like that, but made of me.
Right, you're the big metal pole in the middle.
Pole. Yeah, she loves that. Now, Mimsy doesn't, the times I've tried it, she's like, oh, hell no, and jumps out of the bag. And there she goes running. But Annie is a daredevil. Annie is a daredevil, and I think more than anything, it's just blind trust in me. So I gotta be careful there.
Yeah.
But it's just like, she's thinking like, oh, he ain't gonna hurt me. Now, like my fear is like one day, like I'll be swinging and like one of the handles will like rip off on the bag because she's played with it so much, and like the bag will go flying. And I'll be like, sorry.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Be careful.
Maybe I'll have to invest in a better bag.
Yeah, but you never know what kind of bag she's going to like. She seems to like really sort of crappy bags.
Well, she is a Jasmine. But that is the cat update for the week, folks. We'll definitely have many more stories in the weeks to come about Annie and Mimsy.
Yes.
All right, now our main event this week.
The main event.
Yes, we are diving back into an article that was posted on our good friend's website, procon.org. Do you want to tell folks about it?
Yeah, it is about American socialism. And it gives us the top 3 pros and cons for American socialism. It is from 2002, January 2002.
And as always with something like that, I mean, we would probably be remiss if we didn't say that, maybe there have been some things that have changed since then, but I don't think that much has.
No, in the last 18 months, I don't think so.
You said 2002.
I meant to say 2022.
Okay, that's a different story.
Yeah, sorry, January 2022.
Okay, so
Not much has changed since then.
Not much, no. It's still a wacky place in this country. Oof. So what we're going to do is read the pros and the cons and talk about them like we do here. You have chosen to start us off this week with the pros. Do you want to dive into the pro number one?
Pro number one. The U.S. already has many successful and popular socialist policies. A lot of everyday American policies are socialist. Medicare, Social Security, the minimum wage, and child labor laws, to name a few. As Jack Schwartz, the late Newsday book editor and author, explained, the Socialist Party platform of 1912 contained many policies Americans now wouldn't think of as socialist, including an 8-hour workday at a decent wage, a public works program for the jobless, realized later in the New Deal's Work Progress Administration, safety regulations for workers in the mines and factories, the child labor law, an old age pension, unemployment and accident insurance, a graduated income tax, an inheritance tax, suffrage for women, a direct vote in national elections, doing away with the Electoral College, the creation of separate departments of health, education, and labor, and a convention to revise the Constitution. The first of their political demands was absolute freedom of the press, speech, and assembly. If existing and proposed socialist policies are so heavily favored, they should be maintained.
I think, as the article pointed out, one thing that has been common over the years, and I've seen it pop up millions of times, I've seen it happen, you turn on the news, you see it's there. You have a super conservative person yelling out the word socialist for anything that could be construed as, helping someone that is not a big corporation. Like you look at, something, there was a video on TikTok circulating around about this old TV news video that was shot in California in the 80s when the law went in, I guess the law was already there about seatbelts, but they were going to start heavily enforcing it. And you had people even then, calling it socialist, communist, and all that stuff without thinking about how having laws, socialist policies like that in place helps a majority of the people. Because I'm sorry, having a certain segment of the population unable to afford housing and medical stuff isn't a good thing for the rest of society.
No.
It's not. It costs more to maintain the system as it is just to make a few billionaires happy than it would be to put some policies in place that can actually help people. We're not talking about, making sure every single household has lobster and caviar dinners every night. We're talking, I don't think people should have to starve. And if the government has to chip in a little bit so a person could have some food for the month, then I got no problem with that coming out of my taxes. Like, what do they say? Like $36 out of your taxes each year gets used towards public welfare, but a lot more gets taken out for like government subsidies or the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like obscene, the things that, people want to stop and label as socialist just because they don't want to pay a little extra in taxes. It's selfishness.
Yeah, it's absolute selfishness. And it's interesting to me what the article points out is that way back in 1912, the socialists were out ahead in the vanguard, and it really wasn't until complete economic collapse in the form of Black Friday.
Or Black Monday.
Black Monday, yeah.
Yeah.
Black Friday is that sales time. The sale is
I've lived through a few.
yeah, the opposite of Black Monday. But it took that happening for those policies to be accepted by the population. That unfortunately, maybe that's what has to happen with things like guaranteed universal income, the right to housing, the right to food.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things that currently, those things are in the United Nations Bill of Rights.
Yeah, we can't continue to live in a society that is built to satisfy the needs of so few.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Jeff Bezos is going to be just fine if a couple billion of his dollars is taken away in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be fine. He's not going to lose his home. He's not going to have to eat out of used dog food cans in a dumpster somewhere. Okay, he's going to be fine. We could go on, but I think, you know,
You get the picture.
there are too many good examples of what policies that people would call socialists out there do that you just, being against them, it just shows how much of a selfish piece of trash you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shall I go on to the first con?
Yeah.
Okay. Con number one. The U.S. already has too many costly social entitlements. Socialism is a series of entitlements that cost the American public a considerable amount of money. 2018 estimates put the cost of democratic socialist proposals, including but not limited to Social Security expansion, free college, paid family leave, and medical care for all at $42.5 trillion over 10 years. In 2017, the federal government spent about $2.7 trillion on entitlements, including Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance. If new entitlements cost $4.2 more per year, that's a 157% increase in government spending for handouts. To raise money to pay for the entitlements, taxes are going to have to be raised. The socialists propose a wealth tax, but 60% of registered voters were not in favor of a wealth tax if it applied to them, if they won the lottery, for example. So because of people are selfish fucks, we shouldn't have taxes. I mean, like, I am all for having oversight in place to make sure programs like this are being run on the up and up, that there's not abuse, that there's not fraud, that, you know, the money is being spent correctly. I got no problem with that. But just this whole idea of we spend a lot on it, which, you know, as we've already mentioned, compared to stuff like military spending, we don't spend that much on welfare and entitlements at all.
Well, and what they're saying about the 300% increase is that, you know, it's totally inadequate now. And if we just consider inflation, it will continue to be that cost as time goes on, even at the totally crappy level it's at now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to increase. Like everything increases over time. But then the other thing I wanted to point out is that the amount, 300% of a very small number, is still a very small number. So 300% of something is 3 times that amount. So let's say we're spending $20 trillion on entitlements.
Mm-hmm.
They're woefully inadequate. Multiply that times 3. It's still such a tiny percentage of the entire budget, which is mostly military spending.
If we just simply get back to pre-1980s level tax rates in this country, I think a lot of this funding questions that people have would magically disappear. But, you know, the reason, you know, like people just have, I get not wanting any unnecessary money to go out of your pocket to go someplace else. But, you know, like, you have no choice but to take a part in this whole experiment called the United States. If you're born here, right? You know, if you were a citizen and you live here and you make money here, you got to contribute to everything being kept up. And yeah, I'm sorry, that means making sure that your neighbors don't have to starve.
Mm-hmm.
That your neighbors can get, you know, halfway decent health care so they don't have to go into extreme debt or, you know, or die simply because they don't have the money to go to the doctor.
Yeah, and when you put it in those kinds of terms, socialism makes a whole lot of sense.
All right, speaking of that, how about you read pro number 2?
Absolutely. The job of the U.S. government is to enable and protect all of its citizens. More socialist policies can work with capitalist structures to undo the harm done by unfettered capitalism. Capitalism has resulted in the top 1% of Americans holding more wealth, that is a combined net worth of $34.2 trillion, or 30% of all U.S. wealth, than the bottom 50% of Americans, who only have 2.1 trillion, or 1.9%. The disparity is not because billionaires work harder than those earning a minimum wage. Instead, rich Americans have had more access and exposure to the stock market, and the Americans with the top 10% of wealth hold over 88% of all available equity in corporations and mutual fund shares. The top 1% hold more than twice as much equity than the bottom 50% of Americans combined. And nationwide crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic only increase these disparities. Socialist policies, particularly a wealth tax, could redistribute wealth and aid Americans who have been penalized by a structurally inequitable system. Those who support socialist policies believe the measures could create a fairer, more generous system and build upon and improve capitalism. Adding socialist policies isn't an either-or debate against capitalism. Both systems can function together. Yeah, so this to me, many of my socialist friends would say that's not true. That's not a pro. Because capitalism is capitalism. Part of what capitalism does as a matter of the course of the policy is that wealth gets concentrated and more concentrated and more concentrated, until what we've seen in the past is we can only do that so long until the system collapses. And at that point, people are more willing to pool their money to help themselves and people they know. The billionaires who lost everything in the Great Depression.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened in 2008. The people that were helped the most were the corporations.
Yeah.
And there were even some corporations that were, from what I read, kind of coerced into taking said help from the government when they said they didn't really need it either. But, when it comes to the help that the government gives, like also skip ahead, COVID-19, they thought that two $1,200 checks would hold people over for a couple of years.
Yeah, wasn't that ridiculous, that idea that we were going to get some kind of guaranteed income for any kind of period of time?
Those were the days. But, think about how a universal basic income would help somebody. Maybe there is a person out there that doesn't have much ambition that would be perfectly happy with a universal basic income and just existing, okay? Maybe there are people like that, but having look at the person who maybe loses a job. Getting a new job is not as simple as you think it is, and it can take time, a month or two sometimes. And if you put the work in, you'll definitely find something. But having 2 months where you're not having money come in, good luck paying rent. And if you get kicked out, how can you get a job at that point?
Right, and to then get a new place, you've got to have a job, so you can't. It's a never-ending pit.
There needs to be a lot more equity in this country between the uber rich and the average citizen. There just needs to be. I remember back in the day when during the Bush administration, they talked about the wealth tax. And, when I first heard it, I was like, that does seem wrong. But then the more I read into it, they were hoping that the American people would be so upset about this that they would support repealing. It was the inheritance tax or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That they wanted to get rid of by calling it a death tax, but not exactly telling people that tax only affected these extremely super rich people. You, Aunt Phyllis, who lives in, Maine somewhere, are not being affected by that whatsoever.
That is absolutely correct. Many of the things that are used as boogeymen by the GOP in order to keep their voters in line are things like that.
That, scare tactics, outright lies. Is that to say the Democratic Party has always been, the pristine arbiters of truth in this country? Of course not.
No.
But, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, ever since in our era, from the Reagan on, the Republicans have just gone extremely, extremely dark, selfish, and just plain fucking evil. There's no...
They're Sith Lords now.
There's no defending their actions. Now, again, I'm talking about Republican politicians. Do I think that there are conservatives out there that are still principled? Indeed, I do. I think there are. But they're not in Washington. You know?
Right. They would go there and be like, I can't be here.
Exactly. I mean, there are, stories along the way of like state, officials, like a governor or something like that, like that Ohio governor, like he's not a good governor, still going off against, trying to get a statewide ban of abortion in Ohio. But during the pandemic, he was one of the few Republican governors that was like, bring us all the help we can get. We need it.
Mm-hmm.
And urging people to do the right thing, so someone I would call principled. I don't agree with his policies. If I lived in Ohio, I would gladly vote against the man, but at the end of the day, he, did what was right. And I don't think there are many. They're resigning, like Mitt Romney.
Yep.
Anyway, shall I go on?
I mean, that party is so divided, like you and I have talked about, that the only thing that we see as a way forward is some type of coalition government.
Hopefully, but, that Jim Jordan guy, the guy who, let a sexual abuse scandal happen without doing anything about it at the college he worked at before he became a politician, and in his 16 years in Congress, he's not been able to pass one bill. At all, wants to be the Speaker of the House. And this is a guy who has known ties to the January 6th insurrection. Putting him in that spot could cause a lot of problems. Now, what's heartening is seeing that there are people in the Republican Party who see that as well.
Yeah.
There are people that are voting against that. But anyway, shall I go on? Con number 2.
Yeah, con number 2, please.
All right. The job of the U.S. government is to enable free enterprise and then get out of the way of individual ingenuity and hard work. The government should promote equal opportunity, not promise equal results. As the Dallas Federal Reserve explained, free enterprise means men and women have the opportunity to own economic resources such as land, minerals, manufacturing plants, and computers, and to use those tools to create goods and services for sale. Others have no intention of starting a business. If they choose, they can offer their labor, another economic resource, for wages and salaries. By allowing people to pursue their own interests, a free enterprise system can produce phenomenal results. Running shoes, walking shoes, mint toothpaste, gel toothpaste, skim milk, chocolate milk, cellular phones, and BlackBerries are just a few of the millions of products created as a result of economic freedom. When the government allows individuals to pursue what is best for them without interference, individuals prosper, the country enjoys an average per capita GDP roughly 6 times greater than those with lower levels of economic freedom, as well as higher life expectancy, political and civil liberties, gender equality, and happiness. In summary, the diversity of economic freedom helps us thrive both as individuals and society. What a magical wonderland that would be to live in, right? If that were to happen, but it's not. And the problem is they go under the assumption that the person that is offering their labor somehow has equitable power to the person paying for that labor.
Right.
They don't. There's an imbalance there. And the government can step in and make sure that both sides have an equal advantage. This is not about labor always having to win, but look at what's been happening to wages or, since the 80s at least. They have not risen with inflation at all. Like the national minimum wage is still $7.25. A number of states have, corrected that on their own, but nationally, it should be raised higher. They talk about this system of everybody having a chance if they just put the work in, it was mentioned.
The great meritocracy.
Yeah, and it was mentioned in one of the posts, one of the prose that you read earlier about the billionaire, not working, harder than anybody else. I mean, if you think about it, yeah, like there is nobody that works 1 billion times better than you. Literally.
Right. What they do is not 1 billion times more important than what I do.
They're not. I mean, and if you have that that douchebag Jeff Bezos, for instance, publicly talking about, oh, I get up at 10 o'clock and I sit and think, and then I go to my first meeting at this time. It's like, he's not working that fucking hard. He's not. He's not someone to be admired. He's not someone to be looked up to. He should be the first in line for the guillotine, in my opinion. But, he's not a good person. And emulating people like that, trying to say that they somehow have the same amount of power that workers have is ridiculous. It's not true.
Yeah, and there's nothing really that ties having a lot of money to being a decent person.
In fact, the opposite ends up being true more often than not. The more money you have, the worst of a human being you are, because you have the ability to make things go away. Like O.J. Simpson is a free man today because people loved O.J. As Chris Rock put it, if he was Orenthal, the bus driving murderer, he'd be in jail.
Well, and he also could afford the best lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, literally at the time. I mean, like, F. Lee Bailey was on the downslide of his career, but in the mid-90s was definitely a known name that people still knew.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a drunk, but hey. But all I would want is equity. Because, I agree. Like, if there was a company, a union that said, oh, we're not going to go back to work unless you give us all, like $5 million raises, and the company doesn't have the money to do that, that's an unrealistic demand. And yeah, that wouldn't be good. But there just needs to be equity so that, there can be proper compromise at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because owners will not get everything they want. Labor will not get everything they want. But you can work together, because labor, by working with business, will make sure that there's still a job there.
Mm-hmm.
Business, by working with labor and making them happy, will have people that will continue to make them money. That I don't get too. Like, why companies don't see the value in investing in their people. I mean, go to your local fast food place and look how excited they are to work there. But on the flip side, think of a place like Burgerville. It's a local food joint here in Portland, Oregon, but they are unionized, and their workers have a lot more cheeriness than you would find at a McDonald's.
Yeah, and they seem to be much more diverse in terms of age and race, and like it's a better job.
It is. I mean, having a union to have your back, that's the great equalizer, and it's great to see people finally opening their eyes, in my generation at least, to the power of what a union can offer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the important thing here, speaking back to this particular con, if there is a day in the future to where labor can have an equal seat at the table, great. That would be a great day. That is not this day. That has not ever happened in this country. There have been times to where you've had politicians like your Teddy Roosevelts or LBJs, putting their foot down and actually putting in some good policies that help people. But more often than not, Congress knows that if they fundraise with Wall Street, they're going to get a lot of money. So why make them mad? Why turn off the money spigot?
Yep.
All right. What is the last pro?
The last pro is that the American public supports the implementation of more socialist policies. In general, socialist policies are broadly supported by Americans. 69% support Medicare for all. 63% support free public college tuition. 59% support raising the minimum wage to $15 by 2025. 85% support paid work leave for illness. 82% support paid maternity leave. 69% support paid paternity leave. 67% support paid leave to care for an ill family member. 74% support continued Social Security benefits without cuts. 66% support government-led environmental protections, and 64% support a wealth tax.
With the average citizen out there, conservative or progressive alike, the numbers don't lie. People, the average person, understands what these entitlement programs can do as a positive in people's lives. unfortunately, this also shows the power that lobbying blocs have. You know, the rich and powerful in this country have paid a lot of money to get the best people to create a message that will get the average person voting against their own self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, I'm hopeful for the future that some of that is going to change. It's always been a constant in American politics, so I don't think it's ever going to go away. But again, I think we can fight towards getting our power back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now is the time, and we're seeing that happening with unionization going on and strikes and contract battles.
Yeah, like there was this back in 2012, I took this course at a trade school to get the A+ computer certification, and the guy teaching the course was a total asshole, just complete prick, and I lost all respect for him one day because he came into class and said, "Sorry, I was a couple minutes late." And he was a couple minutes late, but his wife was at the hospital giving kidney stones, and he was there teaching that class. Everybody was like, "Why are you here?
Right.
Your wife's in the hospital. We can handle a day off." But he had to teach. And there are people in this country that will see what he did and say, "What a wonderful work ethic."
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
What he did. He's a horrible, horrible human being for not being there for a family member. But think about all the people who don't really have a choice in the matter. You know, the people that, you know, may be lucky to get a job at a 7-Eleven or something like that and nothing else. And they have to keep that job to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a family member get sick too.
And they keep a job like that or another job like that for 40 years and have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they have, they're going to spend it really quickly if they try to retire. And so people depend on Social Security for any hope of being able to stop working or stop working so much when they get older.
Yeah, this notion that people still have in their head of welfare queens, you know, of people that are abusing the system so much that, you know, they arrive at the welfare office in a brand new Cadillac and fur coats and stuff like that. Like, one, it doesn't happen. Two, it's literally just, you know, punching down. You know, you are not helping anything financially in this country by being against somebody who just wants some time off to care for a sick family member who may be unemployed for a couple months, you know, to your point, doesn't want to work until they die. You know, I mean, it's like, it's one thing if you're like Tiny Tim, for instance. He died of a heart attack on stage.
Mm-hmm.
The creative endeavor is different than a job at 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so these are simple things that can be enacted and that have been enacted in similar countries to ours successfully. And yet the reason we don't do it is because a few billionaires may have to have a platinum bathtub installed at a later date. I don't know. We're coming to a reckoning in this country to where something is going to happen. And, you know, too many people, as the numbers show, as you said in the pro, too many people see the value in having some sort of a safety net. Shall I go on with the last con?
Last con, please.
Yes. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. It's a late recording time here, folks. All right. Con number 3. The American public supports a capitalist economy. The American public does not support socialism. 60% of Americans have favorable views of capitalism, while 38% have an unfavorable view of socialism. 84% of Americans support free enterprise, a cornerstone of capitalism, and 60% believe a free market model is the best economy. Capitalism is the best fit for the American entrepreneurial spirit. As Mark J. Perry, Ph.D., MBA, scholar at American Enterprise Institute and professor of economics and finance at the University of Michigan, explained, capitalism will play a major role in the global revival of liberty and prosperity because it nurtures the human spirit, inspires human creativity, and promotes the spirit of enterprise. By providing a powerful system of incentives that promote thrift, hard work, and efficiency, capitalism creates wealth. The main difference between capitalism and socialism is this: capitalism works. Bullshit. Bullshit, because the number time, like if you ask the general person out there what a socialist is, they're going to go, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is no socialist in any way, shape, or form. People don't have an understand. It's like the people that get upset at Obamacare but love them the Affordable Care Plan.
Yeah.
You know, like people have routinely in this country during my lifetime, at least, and probably for a lot longer, been upset and angry over things that they know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
As the number showed in the pro, people believe in socialist ideas. It's just we have one party in this country that has successfully used that as a buzzword to completely shut down any sort of conversation on how to offer any sort of real solutions. It's socialist. We can't be socialist. Ooh.
It's pretty ridiculous because there are lots of really successful socialist countries, like many Western European countries.
Yeah, like
You
Sweden.
can be a democracy politically and be socialist economically.
Yeah, because like didn't they say in like Germany that like you may pay a little more in taxes, but those taxes are being used to pay for stuff like you being able to go to the doctor and not having to pay an arm and a leg. You know, you pay like $10 to get a checkup from a doctor or something like that. Or Deutschmarks. Ho ho ho. I know a German.
It's euros now.
Yeah. Shouldn't be. Anyway, people don't get this. Like, it's like we've cut education so much, we've cut civics so much that people don't have a basic understanding of these terms, and they're making decisions based on scare tactics by people that do know what the terms actually mean, but understand that they can use it as a dog whistle.
Yeah.
The goal, the end result here, folks, at the end of the day, I guess, is just educate yourself more. You know, if you see any sort of story about any sort of entitlement, dig a little deeper than just what you see on the headline, and go to multiple sources too to kind of do some research from there. But I think most people are okay with some sort of a social safety net for people. I don't think, people are generally that evil. I just think that, when it comes to protecting your own self, that instinct of being careful usually does kick in when you have somebody or about to touch your money or something like that. But don't fall for the propaganda. Now, does that mean socialist policies should just be enacted and run any way they want? Of course not. I'm always in favor of like oversight and making sure things are being run correctly. And, if at some point in the future you determine it's not needed anymore.
Wow, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, but there's long story short, just educate yourself. I mean, that's all you can do to aid in this fight here, because if you have a family member that only gets their political points from, watching cable news or something like that, if you do your homework, you can hopefully, fingers crossed, kind of counteract some of that ignorance by saying, Aunt Phyllis, you're full of shit.
always charming Tim the Nerd.
That's right. Any other thoughts on socialism? Do you consider yourself a socialist?
I don't know. I think socialists, unfortunately, have waded into the business of talking about things that don't have to do with economics. And that causes rifts between people. Like, it's not just pure socialism, like we should collect the capital and redistribute it to the people. That's the part I believe in.
Yeah.
Now, whether, Israel or Palestine is right, whether, people in Chechnya should, I don't know, like all these things that international labor gets involved in, I'm kind of like, what?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, because we were kind of talking about it in a similar way to, something else you were dealing with, but you want to be able to use your power correctly. If you have like the local, Duluth, Minnesota sewing team at the local high school condemning, an international terrorist group, I don't think that's going to hold much water. I don't think the terrorists are going to be like, oh no, they're going to knit us something scary. Ooh, but
But
having
I think this idea of solidarity gets applied to like everyone everywhere, and I think people need to like stay in their own lane in order to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, know where your strengths are, like, and use your strengths wisely to benefit the cause. It would be like me trying to join a cause that would see me going door to door trying to talk to people. That's not going to happen. That's not my strength. But I can do other things in support of a cause I believe in that would be good. And sometimes too, I mean, you mentioned the Israel Palestine thing. Sometimes that means not talking about it.
Yeah.
Not that I don't have an opinion on it, but my opinion is not educated in any way, shape, or form on what's going on in that part of the world. I mean, I will put it out there. I hope it doesn't lead to war. I hope people are okay, and I hope the innocent people on both sides are able to stay safe and not have to live in a war zone.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more that can be said on it, but again, I don't know much about that thing, so me talking about it would just be stupid. It would be disrespectful to what is going on over there and the struggles that people are facing. All right, so it is past midnight as we record here. This is not one of those, we're going to record for 24 hours for charity. The professor wouldn't make it. Professor needs to go to bed right now because the professor is going to wake up another long day at work tomorrow.
Yep.
Yep, typing away. I'm going to be writing some stuff. We'll see what happens there. Any words for our lovely audience before we wrap up?
No, I just hope that you're taken care of as good as the socialists would take care of you.
Because they will take better than you. Much better than Cancun Cruise. Anyway, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
And farewell.
He's a socialist.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.